Welcome to Newslaundry Chhota Hafta. For the full episode, subscribe because it is behind the paywall and only subscribers get access to uncut, complete content. Newslaundry Hafta is our weekly wrap of all that made the news, all that didn't, and all that should have and all that shouldn't have. We agree, we disagree, we critique, and occasionally we beat each other up. But it's all good fun. Subscribe.
This is a Newslaundry podcast and you're listening to NL Hafta.
A very good afternoon. Hello everyone. It is 19th of May, Thursday, 3 p.m. and we're recording our Hafta without Abhinandan because Abhinandan is in London, in the cooler climes of the United Kingdom, having fun. Hopefully our subscribers will get to meet them. We're here with our weekly NL Hafta. In-house, I have with me Raman sir. Hello,
Hi.
Raman sir. Mehraj.
Hello.
And Fahad Zuberi, who's joining us from Ahmedabad.
Hi.
Hi. How hot is it there?
In the late 40s.
Okay, great. Same pinch. Fahad is an independent scholar and researcher of architecture and city studies. He's a writer and contributor with the Indian Express, Outlook, Leaflet, and Domus India. Before we get to the headlines, I have some announcements to make. We have a new page for subscribers to send letters to our show. So if you want to write to Hafta, you can just go to newslaundry.com/podcast-letters. We also have a new email for podcast letters, which is podcasts@newslaundry.com. So you can send your mails there. We have a lot of lawyers and techies as part of our Friends of NL. And Abhinandan had said that he's looking forward to speak to CAs who have understanding of company restructuring. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're a CA and you know someone who would like to volunteer in this space, please write to us at subscription@newslaundry.com. We have two new NL Sena projects. One is on MP and much of the reporting has been done on that. We have Prateek and Ashwin in Madhya Pradesh. In fact, under this podcast, you can watch a small snippet of their reporting from there. They are looking into this whole bulldozer phenomena and looking at who's been affected, the politics behind it, and a lot of other things. And we have another NL Sena project on the yogi who has it all. We will not tell you who this yogi is, but you can contribute to this NL Sena project, both of them if you'd like. And you'll get free merch and subscriptions with it. Next week, I'm going to be in Australia, in Sydney on 29th and in Melbourne on 4th. So if you'd like to meet up, please write to us at subscription@newslaundry.com. I believe it's going to be a really rainy week in Australia. So maybe we can go to some nice cafe or some nice restaurant and chat.
You didn't check the weather before?
Yeah, unfortunately, I thought ठंड होगी वहाँ पे यहाँ से जाएंगे, but apparently बहुत ठंड हो गई है. Okay, so we have a limited period offer. If you gift an annual Disruptor subscription in addition to the merch, we'll send you a book signed by the Newslaundry team. We also have a couple of calendars to give out by Manjul. Some of the books that we have with us is Saeed Naqvi's Muslim Vanishes, Anupama Chopra's A Place in My Heart, M.R. Sharan's Last Among Equals, Amitabha Kumar's The Blue Book, a writer's journal. Once you have gifted a subscription, write to us at subscription@newslaundry.com. Now, I think let's get to the headlines and then we have a lot to discuss and we have a very interesting guest with us. So I have a lot of questions for him. Mehraj, can you please
the headlines. We'll start with the breaking news.
Yeah.
Navjot Singh Sidhu is going to jail.
Yeah.
It seems the Supreme Court has awarded the Congress leader a 1-year jail term in a road rage case from about 30 years ago.
And he'll be in the Patiala jail where even Bikram Majid has lodged. So both opponents can hang out together.
And the sort of the big dominating news is around the Gyanvapi mosque.
Yeah.
This week, a Varanasi court directed district officials to seal a spot in the mosque where a quote-unquote shivling was supposedly found during a court-mandated survey. The shivling is said to be part of a fountain in the ablution area. The Supreme Court was scheduled to hear a petition challenging the survey today, Thursday that is, but deferred the hearing till tomorrow. In the interim, it asked the Varanasi court not to issue any order. Meanwhile, taking off from the Varanasi court's orders on Gyanvapi Mosque, it's pretty much open season now on several other monuments across the country. A former Archaeological Survey of India officer has gone to town, nightly TV that is, claiming that the Qutub Minar in Delhi was built by Raja Vikramaditya and not Qutubuddin Aibak. This gentleman named Dharamveer Sharma says the minar was built to study the direction of the sun.
It's Surya Stambh also, somebody said.
But did he say which Vikramaditya? Because there are like a dozen of them.
No. The nuance you can't expect.
And Qutubuddin Aibak is not very old. I mean, and I'm 60.
Yeah.
So I've been reading it since my childhood. Yeah. I mean, Qutubuddin Aibak.
In Maharashtra, the Archaeological Survey has closed Aurangzeb's tomb for 5 days. This happened after AIMIM leader Akbaruddin Owaisi visited the tomb and immediately drew criticism from the ruling Shiv Sena. And afterwards, a leader of the Maharashtra Navnirman Sena, that's Raj Thakre's party, said the tomb should be destroyed so that people could no longer go there. And a Mathura court has admitted a petition seeking ownership of Shahi Idgah Mosque land in the city. The petition was filed by the Sri Krishna Janmabhoomi Trust and others. They claim that the land belongs to the Sri Krishna Janmabhoomi Sthal, where Lord Krishna is believed to have been born. And of course, we know that Taj Mahal has been declared Tejomalia a long time ago.
And then you have Jama Masjid also.
Yeah, of course.
There's questions कि Jama Masjid के नीचे दफनाए गए हैं देवी देवता.
The RSS, of course, is in on the act as well. Its publicity chief, Sunil Ambekar, talked about the Gyanvapi Mosque at a journalism awards function yesterday.
Narada Award.
Now imagine that. And he said, and I quote, "It's true that India is assimilative. People talk about the Ganga Jamuna culture, but it should become one. It should all become Ganga." Wow.
And only then we can walk together.
But I mean, as if on cue, Jamuna, the river, not the metaphor, has dried up. So that should tell us something. AIMIM chief Asaduddin Owaisi, meanwhile, has said that Muslims are not ready to lose another mosque after the Babri Masjid. Also this week, there was a really tragic industrial accident in Delhi. It happened on May 13 when a fire broke out in what's said to be an illegal factory in Mundka area. 27 people are confirmed dead so far, of whom 21 are women, and dozens of people are apparently still missing. Wholesale inflation in April has surged to 3-decade high of 15.08%, up from 14.55% in March. Hold on to your wallets a little tighter. Wheat export ban shakes world markets, wheat prices up 6%. Punjab farmers sat on a protest near the Chandigarh-Mohali border on Tuesday after being stopped from heading to the state capital to press their demands, including a bonus on wheat and the beginning of paddy sowing from June the 10th. Meanwhile, the politics over water has begun again in Delhi, with the state and Haryana sparring over the supply to Yamuna. Delhi Lieutenant Governor Anil Baijal has resigned. According to reports, he has cited personal reasons for this.
He had served 5 years, so he should go.
The 3 municipal corporations of Delhi will be formally merged on May 22nd, the central government announced on Wednesday. According to a notification issued by the Union Home Ministry, the Municipal Corporation Amendment Act 2022 will come into effect from May 22nd. The legislation was approved by Lok Sabha on March 30th and by Rajya Sabha on April 5th. The President gave his assent on April 18th. Congress leader P. Chidambaram has said that the CBI raided his houses in Chennai and in New Delhi on Tuesday, but didn't find anything. The Supreme Court on Wednesday allowed implementation of reservation for other backward classes in the local bodies' polls in Madhya Pradesh, but emphasized on the 50% overall reservation cap, which I believe is really arbitrary and should be done away with. But Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan on Wednesday called it a historic day for the state and claimed that his government took all possible measures to ensure the quota for the community. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi has said that regional parties have their place, but they cannot defeat BJP because they don't have an ideology, as if Congress has.
And meanwhile, Congress has decided that it'll go on a Padyatra in October when the temperatures cool down. In autumn breeze, they'll walk and save India.
Staying with the Congress, one of their prominent faces in Gujarat, Hardik Patel, has quit. And the reason he gave was whenever our country faced challenges and when the Congress needed leadership, Congress leaders were enjoying abroad.
And former Punjab president of the Congress,
Sunil Jakhar.
He's also joining BJP today.
He's joining BJP today, yeah.
That's about it for the headlines.
Now that they've found the shivling and, there are questions around, whether it's a shivling or a fountain or not. And we know that temple was destroyed to build a mosque. Now, again, it's convoluted who, when, what, which century. But we know temples existed and they were destroyed. I was just thinking if they give this, now how are they going to prove that this shivling hai nahi hai? They'll have to give it for carbon dating.
How did they prove Ayodhya?
And they'll have to say ki but the thing is if they give it for carbon dating, obviously it'll be pre-16th century. And then anything becomes, then everything is up for debate.
It's the mythology. 500 pages of Ayodhya is full of mythology.
The Supreme Court.
This is what is written in Veda. This must have happened. Lord Rama must have born here. If you just read the entire thing, they're drawing it from the mythology.
Now the question is not that act exists and therefore we should not convert. The question should be, why does the act exist in the first place? Right? So if we are asking this question, everyone is asking this question, was it a temple? Was it not a temple? And that was the point of my piece, that we are asking the wrong question. The question that we should be asking is, what do we do with our conflicted architectural sites? And when you look at post-independence history, we have resolved it. And we resolved it in 1991 when we said that, yes, we have had a messy history like everywhere else in the world. And we continue to have a messy recent history as well. Right? We are living in quite messy times. We cannot say we had a messy history, now we are okay. No, we are still messy and we shall remain. So that is a problem. That is problem number one. Problem number two, what will you take as evidence? Is it a title suit? No, the person will say it's not a title suit because मुझसे तो खरीदा ही नहीं गया था मेरे ऊपर तो you attacked me and you took it by force. And then the other person would say, but you also don't have evidence because mythology by definition is without evidence. All of these problems that existed before our judiciary, our state committed itself to modern values were resolved by saying that we are going to have a status quo as they exist on 15th of August 1947. We are going to maintain them as they are. Because now we don't adhere to those systems. Now we don't adhere to mythology guiding our reason. We don't adhere to expansionism and violence and brute force guiding our polity. But remember, when those things used to happen, they were perfectly legitimate. Now when Putin invades Ukraine, we say that it's a bad thing to do. Back when kings would go around across the world, go around invading each other and then capturing those, everyone thought it was legitimate. That was the way to rule. And that changed over time.
I mean, in modern times, politics is not messier per se. I think the politicians deliberately make it messier. Now, I mean, if you look at what are we discussing? We are discussing Aurangzeb. We are discussing Gyanvapi. Now, I think the new thing which has come up today is in Mathura, the birthplace of Lord Krishna. None of this you can't argue. You can't be reasonably, you can't argue it. There's a mythology and you have to follow that mythology. And if you want to believe in that, so if courts want to believe in that, they can do everything. But why it becomes messy? The present time politicians, they are just weaponizing this, using this history as a weapon and trying to sidetrack the real issues. If you just read the papers, the past 2 days newspapers, or if you just see on the TV the kind of arguments that they are giving, that L.K. Advani had said that if Muslims agree to give us Ayodhya, we will not raise other issues. Since the Muslims did not agree, we got Ayodhya through the court. So that is why we do not agree with it. Now we want Mathura and Kashi as well. So I think they always back out from their promises.
When we say that we haven't dealt with history very well and it's kind of this argument is gaining currency, I think that's a misdirection. Because the first point is, what kind of history? Whose history? In India, I think this problem started partly during the British era and afterwards because it was sort of a need of the hour. So the leaders of the national struggle, they constructed this kind of an artificial political reality in which there was a very straight kind of a continuity from the Vedic era through to the kingdoms, the Buddhist time, the Hindu revivalism, then the Muslim rule, and to British India and to this thing. That was not the case. It's the same thing like we're right now debating whether Aurangzeb was Indian or not. In a very strict sense of the word, he was not. In that respect, they're right. Because there was no India at that time. He was a Mughal ruler. He was the ruler of a Mughal empire. There was a land called India. There was not a nation called India. In the similar sense that there was a land called Africa, but not a nation called Africa, right? You can't say like the ruler of Abyssinia was an African ruler in that sense. So this continuity that has been drawn, and this is partly also the kind of the blame goes to the liberal sort of historians in that sense that they have kind of tried to stretch this history as much as they could and find that continuity, which is necessary if you are trying to build a nation state.
Yeah.
So you have to create what Benedict Anderson calls imagined communities. And one of the ways you do is you find this continuity.
One thing that is clear to me, although, is people have the right to believe whatever they want. It's a free country. I can believe something was something. The state ought to know better, and the courts ought to know even more judiciously. I think Hannah Arendt has written about this, that law and politics should not have hierarchies over each other. And we see that happening in contemporary India. That politics sort of has created, the politics is at a higher hierarchy than law, and law sorts of works behind politics. And therefore, the judiciary, at the end of the day, although it is said that if you're looking towards the judiciary to save your democracy, you already lost your democracy. But the judiciary at the end of the day ought to know better. The judiciary ought to know about constitutionalism, about the modern values. At the same time, yes, there are these problems. There are a lot of these problems, and people have the right to believe what they believe. I mean, people can believe that Gyanvapi was temple which was destroyed. I don't want to go into that question because then I'll be contradicting myself. They have the right to believe. But the courts cannot go on and say, okay, you feel like that there's a sentiment of so many 100,000 of people, then I will go ahead with it. I'll decide a title suit based on what your mythology claims. That makes no sense, and the state ought to be better.
And they don't have a reason to. I mean, anybody who thought that after Babri Masjid, the verdict won't only embolden them, I mean, would have been living in a fool's paradise, because what this court basically did is it handed over the mosque to people who had destroyed it and didn't hold anybody accountable.
And there's the criminal case on the destruction of the mosque is still pending.
Yeah, exactly.
So, is there a point at which the older residents would say this is when things changed, or this is how we are here today, basically? Or was it always like that for a while?
It has been like that for a long time, actually. Even communal clashes in Ahmedabad go back to the Maratha time. In modern post-independence history, the 1969 riots are sort of seen as the point. Those people who have witnessed those riots, they say that they were worse than 2002. And then it has been, although since 2002 we have not seen communal violence, active violence on the body, that we have not seen in Ahmedabad, but the city continues to get segregated. So that is the question of my research in city studies. How is this happening?
Non-veg food is such a taboo, which is why we've taken vegetarian food to such extremes where we're really like experimenting with it in a very extreme way, because you can't eat non-vegetarian. And even to eat egg or whatever, you have to hide yourself sometimes, because it's not.
You have to hide the eggs when you're bringing. You have to hide the eggs when you're bringing them back to your house. But here I want to point out something. See, this is where legalities and the state comes in. The society is like that. I mean, there are kids who would go out to eat non-vegetarian food but not tell their parents. Jain people, all sorts of people. If you followed the news from Gujarat, the municipal corporation recently, I think around 2 or 3 months ago, instructed that non-vegetarian food should not be sold on main streets, so to say.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and so that is how you bring an urban space. Urban space is that place where the state has to guarantee you rights. Right? For example, if you're living at home with your parents might not respect your freedom and all, but you can still go out into the city, be anonymous. By doing this, the state sort of destroys that promise of urbanity, that this is a place where you can come and exercise your rights. On top of that, they also deny the right to do business in public places to these vendors. This phenomena really creates segregated urban spaces. It's not just bad urban planning, it's too much urban planning. We want to control every part of our city and how it grows. And in doing so, we end up in this mess where there is economic potential in an area, but we have norms in that area that do not allow for any sort of industry to operate. And the urban fabric then is just too dense to take that sort of situation. And then see, these people who are migrant workers, they also cannot go to the outskirts of the city to work in a factory.
Yeah. And it's very ridiculous because Delhi had this solution earlier where they built houses, nice, affordable living spaces for immigrants. And they were just so far away from centers of work. So nobody would live there. They preferred living, even on the roads if that had to be done.
Because the plan.
And those were ghost cities now. You look at those cities, it's so weird to see these big buildings or housing complexes are completely empty.
A senior police officer told me, when this fire happened, that how the entire system has been rigged, over a period of time. About 10-15 years ago, if you need a no objection certificate, NOC, for fire, so the fire officer will go, fire inspector and all, and chief fire officer is going to give you the final NOC. But when the police saw that it's going to be quite lucrative because you need NOC for fire, for restaurants, for industries, for each and every office. So the police hijacked the system Now the Home Ministry and the police, they are the ones who give the final NOC.
Yeah, and fire safety is such a specialized
Yes.
field within
Yes.
architecture and design. I don't know how a policeman is even
Yes.
qualified to give that thing.
Apart from what we discussed, there's also obviously the social and economic as well as the cultural aspect, which is one is economic in the sense people are forced to work in conditions like these because poverty. Second is labor laws have been gutted, whatever was remained of it. And the third is again the moral question, because that sanctity of life, especially if it's a poor marginalized life, isn't as strong. And again, partly, this might be contentious, but partly again goes to the caste system, especially if it's people from a certain class, certain caste, the sanctity of life doesn't seem so strong. And all of these kind of things come together and you have tragedies like this.
Do you have a view on Central Vista as a student of architecture? Whether this project can be part of the urban development?
I think it is pretty much part of urban development, definitely. I mean, India as a government has expanded many folds since the original Latins buildings were built. And if you go to those offices, a lot of bureaucrats, if you talk to them, they are under very stressed situations. The National Archives building was under a very bad shape where archives were going bad. So overall, I mean, there was a need to have the project in place. But at the same time, you have a situation where the government is not very open to explaining projects to people. And that generates a sense of mistrust.
Right.
People do not trust governments. So for example, when was the last time somebody came to your house and said, aapke ghar ke samne road banna hai, what are your views on it?
Right.
Nobody comes, no?
Nobody
A contractor shows up and then you figure out, okay, road ban raha tha, now my house has gone down in level. We have not had a tradition where we take public opinion in the projects. And I think that is improving over time.
All of you listening in, the Chhota Hafta, do subscribe so you can listen to the entire Hafta. We will see you again next week with the Hafta. Till then, subscribe, pay to keep news free, because when the public pays, the public is served. When advertisers pay, advertisers are served. Thank you. Goodbye.
All the Newslaundry podcasts are available on Stitcher, iTunes, and any other podcast platform.
Please subscribe to Newslaundry. Help us keep news independent. To catch all our podcasts on news, pop culture, current affairs and sport, visit newslaundry.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Sun liya Afrika, mufat khoro. Not to brag or anything, but Newslaundry Hafta features in the top 50 in the world on SoundCloud in the news and politics category for podcasts. So do subscribe and see what you're missing. Because when the public pays, the public is served. When advertisers pay, advertisers are served. Subscribe, help keep news independent and free. All Newslaundry podcasts are available on iTunes and Stitcher and any other podcast platform.